do that. And
All right.
right, well, we're back for part two. So Bruce had given us a very, very whirlwind tour there around Blackpool. Not a lot of drinking, but he managed to get some ice cream and some barbecue food and have a quick tour around the Tower Ball. I think it's this week, isn't it, when they go to the Tower Ballroom, isn't it? I understand. And
Yeah,
I'm not really watching it very much. So
Did
there
you have
we
a
go.
pound sausage, bros? Pound
no,
burger?
I was getting food poisoning from my last pound sausage in Brilliant, and I've just leave them alone now. Yeah.
Right, so we're going to change tack now. We'll go to the other end of the country. And Nicholas spent a few days down on the Isle of Wight. Now I'm trying to work out, Bruce. You did give us an Isle of Wight feedback, a report. I'm trying to find. I think it was about in the 30s. I'm trying to look when it was when you gave us a. Could you had some
It
time down
was
there, hadn't you?
two,
So
uh,
2 years ago.
it was 2021. I went there 2021. Our second COVID
21.
holiday when we couldn't go abroad. Yes, we went to the Isle of Wight. We stayed in Sandown. I think the highlight of our one was the pub at the bottom of Shanklin. The pub at the bottom of Shanklin Chine. That was our pub highlight for the trip there. Yeah, but some nice booze
What was that
there.
one called,
yes.
bros? Do you remember what it was
I
called?
can't remember. It was the very bottom. The very bottom of Shanklin Chine. It was very, very good.
It was
Was it the steamer?
episode 21.
I really can't.
When Bruce gave us a guide to the Isle of Wight and the southern ports, which included Portsmouth, Brighton, Hastings, and a very short visit to London and the Isle of Wight. So there you go. Anyway, in episode 64, Nicholas is going to little rundown, little. Well, it's the second most pop. It's the largest, but the second most populous island in England. Do you know which is the most popular island in England? Populous, sorry, more people living there than any other island.
Isle of Man.
No, well, that's technically not in England.
Oh no.
Island.
Purbeck, Isle of Purbeck,
You're getting closer.
Isle of Sheppey, Isle of Dogs,
Isle of
Isle of
Sheppey
Dogs, Isle of Sheppey.
no, you're up there. I
Mm.
think the Isle of Sheppey is third, and the Isle of
Oh.
Wight second. You've been there, Bruce. In fact, you talked about it in episode 21. So across, it's on there actually. Is it on there? I think it's on there. Or is it? No, it's not. Yes, it is. Yeah. It's the Isle of Portsea, which obviously is basically Portsmouth, isn't it? Because Portsmouth is an island, isn't it? So
Ah,
that's the most
yeah, yeah.
populous island in the UK. However, the Isle of Wight is bigger, is the biggest. Between 2 and 5 miles out in the Channel from various ports. Did you go from Portsmouth, Nick, or from Southampton? Where did you sail from?
No, sadly, we went from Southampton because I fancy going out of Portsmouth, with all my military interests.
Yeah.
But for some reason, other half had booked us out of Southampton.
All right.
And because also Portsmouth would have been the nearest on the island where we were actually from where
Right.
it docks in the
Yeah.
island, which
Yeah.
is just around by Ryde. Literally, it would have been a 2-minute car ride, but instead we
right.
had to go into Cowes. But anyway, there we are.
There we go. So it's
So yeah, you said it was a few days, but yeah, it was a long way there and back.
long way there and back. Victorian vibe. Quaffable says there are 11 breweries on the island, although a lot seem to be kind of brew
No.
pubs. But you've got Goddard's,
Oh.
is it Goddard's,
Yeah.
White Knuckle, Yates's, Island Brewery, and I've also got the Urban Island
That's
Brewery as
it.
well down. Yeah, so there's about 4 or 5 breweries. Although you seem to have spent much time trying to get away from Theakston's and other Yorkshire beers. So come on, give us a quick rundown. You
Well, no,
sent
it
a
was-
couple of pictures in.
So it was interesting. So yeah, we went to the Goddard's Brewery, which is shall we say, the biggest brewery on the island. Very easy to find. They've got a purpose-built, quite a new building. Very impressive inside. Although I believe they've just gone through a buyout, or the people who originally set it up, because it was the first. It was the first. The breweries that are still on the island. This is the oldest one, so it was first established in 1993. And as you can see there from the picture, it's a modern building, but they made it look a bit rural with wooden cladding and all that sort of stuff. So you walk in on the ground floor, you've got the shop, and then you go through the back, and then you go up the stairs and go up the lift. So their bar is actually it's like a semi-mezzanine, But in fact, the other end of the building overlooks one of the main roads that you drive along where you go past the brewery. And they've got like a covered outdoor area. So that was quite nice. Certainly plenty of capacity up there. Many people popping in for something to eat for lunch and stuff like that. But as I say, the actual setup of the brewery all looked grand, and you can see a lot of the different pump clips there. Their most famous beer is probably Fuggledy Dum, which obviously is quite a distinctive name. And we're offering thirds in the brewery tap. So I had two lots of thirds. So I tried 6 of their beers, all good. Surprising though, when you actually go out around the island and go in a lot of the pubs, very few of them seem to stock Goddard's. So I'm wondering whether Goddard's, their main market, is more sort of off the island, around the south of England. Whereas the one that you do see in a lot of the pubs is Yates's, which is one of the breweries. Never got to the brewery there because I think they have a little tap, but certainly the other 3, certainly White Knuckle, they are sort of, as you suggested, Mike, they started in pubs and then some of them increased the capacity, so they've moved to industrial units, but they don't have a standalone facility or tap like Goddard's do. So Goddard's, is worth a drop into. The other ones we found, there is a family-owned pub group, and they have, all these would probably be familiar with people who have ever been there before. So you've got the Dairyman's, which is sort of a big complex that's surrounded by antique shops and artisan craft people. That's just outside of Newport. So that's the Dairyman's Daughter. It seems the Dairyman's Daughter is named after Elizabeth Walbridge, a local girl who died in 1801, made famous by the book Annals of the Poor. Never read the book, never heard of it, but it seems to be a famous book. So they have that one. They also have the Bargeman's Rest, which is where we had our final evening. We'll probably see a photograph of it later on. That's in a little place called just Newport, called Little London, where the barges and the boats would have come into down. It's like a little river estuary, a lot of warehouses there. And so they've taken a former warehouse, and it was a sail makers or a rope makers in there. So that was quite good. That was the final meal. They also have the steamer, and that's on the seafront at Shanklin. And then they also have, the last one is called the Spyglass, which is Ventnor. Chain pubs, there are a few Greene King and 2 or 3 Fuller's pubs, but didn't manage to get into those. This was interesting, wasn't it? The Greene King. It was surrounded by peacocks, and in fact, there was 3 peacocks in the bus stop across the road. So whether they wait for a bus to go in and drink some real ale somewhere or what, I don't know, rather than drinking IPA. But anybody watching the YouTube, you can see the pub, which was called the Hare or the Hare and Hounds, and I see you see 3 white peacocks in the bus stop. Probably the best pub we went in for the holiday was the Crab and Lobster Inn in Benbridge, and this is known for its food, and that was very oldie worldy. This is it, the Crab and Lobster. So it's weird because to get to it, you have to go through like it's almost quite a new build housing estate. And everybody mentions this. You're down this little single track road, and then you've got like houses either side of the road. And basically, you almost think where on earth it's going to lead to. And then all of a sudden, the pub is just at the end. So obviously, the pub was there before on a bit of a hinterland because it's next to actually the lifeguard station or like an old Coast Guard station. And then obviously, the land has been bought and used for housing developments. But on a good day, you'll have a cracking view just literally across the road from where the front of the pub is. They've got a big paved area that you're right there onto the beach. Once again, you mentioned before, Mike, about the availability of beer. So I say it seems that most of the local pubs are stocking Yates's, but when they ran out, or it seems the other offering was Yorkshire beer. So we got Timothy Taylor's Landlord. That was in the Crab and Lobster. And then once again onto YouTube. This was actually in the Crown Inn in Shorwell, which is famous. It has a chalk stream running through its beer garden, and they have some huge, massive, great big rainbow trout in there. And these great big docile rainbow trout that, even though it says do not enter the water, do not go in the stream, do not feed the fish, anybody who sat outside eating their pub lunches obviously chuck stuff in for the fish. So these trout are almost the size of salmon. So stocked off in there. Most of our drink was done during the day. I went up to the bar and they had a Yates's beer on there. And he said, oh, unfortunately, that's just gone off. I said, well, what else have you got on? He says, oh, well, we've just got that one at the moment, which was Thixton's Old Peculiar. So for a Dame Time beer, I said, bloody hell, I said, I only live about 40 miles from where that was brewed. Like, I came down to the Isle of Wight hoping to get some local beers, and this is what I was left with. But it was still all right. It travelled okay. Obviously, OP tends to be a little bit stronger, so it probably will keep a bit better and present a bit better. And I said to him, I said, look, well, have you pulled any off today? And he says, oh, yeah, it's quite popular. Like, so I think it is one of those beers that certainly they were an older clientele in the pub, all having their lunch, ladies and gentlemen who lunch. And so I reckon a few of the old boys were on the old P there, just savouring it. So that was the Crown Inn in Shorewell. So, yeah, otherwise, there were 2 spoons on the island. Sadly, I didn't get to go to either of them. I did walk past the S. Fowler & Co. that I think, Bruce, you had mentioned. You'd either been in and or...
One in Ryde.
Yeah, it's in an old haberdashery shop, but it's quite interesting in that S. Fowler was obviously the name of the shop owner, but it seems he also shared the name, unless it was the same bloke, that was the first guy the first chairman of CAMRA in the Isle of Wight or in Ryde. And the building itself, yeah, it was a retail premises that had been reconfigured inside, and it looked interesting inside. But unfortunately, I would have struggled to get through the door if I'd wanted to go in there, because there's about a dozen to 60 of the locals stood around having their nicotine fix. And from walking up the road and walking back down the other side, they all seem to be still out there. So I don't know whether they were having more than one fag at a time, chain smoking it or what, I don't know. But so that was the only disappointment. I wasn't able to tick off either of the Wetherspoons. But overall, the other good thing about the Isle of Wight, I believe, although we were doing it by car, obviously I'm quite fortunate that the other half is prepared to drive, is that the public transport seems to be pretty good. There seem to be a heck of a lot of buses about. I have been told that sometimes it takes you quite a while to get from point A to point B, because instead of there being like a coastal road that goes all the way around the island, often you've got to come back into the centre and then go back out again. But I should imagine if you wanted to go down there for a few days and not have to rely on a nominated driver, you could pretty much get around the island on public transport, because there's also a train that runs as well from a couple of the ferry terminals into other places. I'm sure you could get around on public transport and have quite a nice tootle around and have quite a nice session.
Yeah, we went. I love when we were there, because we were there. The open top buses running too. We got a day ticket, and you could use them all. We went from Sandown to Yarmouth in a day, and a couple of dropping off places. Public transport is fantastic, really. Yeah.
Well, I know the once a year. I think that they're having to keep it quiet now, because once again, it was one of these things, victim of their own success. They have a vintage bus run, and they literally get people from all over the UK heading down there with their vintage vehicles, vintage buses, and they tie it in with a lot of they make it like a vintage bus and a real ale tour. But I think up until last year, they actually knocked it on the head, because it was bringing more people in than they could actually physically cope with. So I think it's going ahead again, but they don't promote and advertise it as such anymore. I know a guy who was an ex-bus driver, so he'd been down and told me about it, and I said, oh yeah, I've read about that. And he said, oh yeah, it's so popular, like, and it's really good. But he says, basically, it's just got too big. It's just got too busy. They can't cope with it anymore.
Well, just read a little bit about Goddard's. It says Goddard's Brewery moved to that new site in 2023, Lock, Stock and Barrel. They were had been based near Ryde for all the previous life. Hale Common is a business park that's owned by the Isle of Wight Council. It did say that initially you had to be a member to drink in the brewery, so you had to become a brewery club, and all the people I'm reading on the kind of comments saying that's why they're going wrong. So it sounds like, Nick, since you were there, that it went up for sale in October 23, but seems to come off the market now. And it is the Goddard family are still down as the directors. So I'm assuming that they had a change of mind, or the council intervened and said, listen, we've got to make it more open. Because it is saying that in 23 you had to become a member before you could go and buy a drink there. But that seems to, if you didn't,
unless it had something to do with licensing.
Maybe.
Isle of Wight Council may have put a control on it, and then themselves realised, hang on, this business ain't going to work unless we allow them to do what they want to do. And I suppose folks in the area, because it's across from, there's like another antique place. In fact, you might know it, Bruce. They've actually got one of the old, the old underground trains that your nephew was involved in. They've still got one. Actually, it's just sat outside rotting away. But there's like a couple of antique sheds, and it's like a little bit of a retail place. and that's directly opposite where the other side of the road where the brewery is. So, whether it was developed from that and they'd originally mounted concerns and said, look, they're going to take all our business away, but then they realised themselves, well, hang on, it's actually doing good because it's actually bringing more people into our little area. So it may have just been a licensing thing initially about having to be a members club.
All right, well, the talk of trains brings us quite neatly into the final little segment we've got today. So my little report back is from a few days spent in Porthmadog, up in North Wales on the Llyn Peninsula, a place that I've been to a few times. We go once a year and play at Portmeirion, which is just around the corner, but not actually ever stayed in Porthmadog. So again, if you're on YouTube, as you can see, we picked quite a good place really, because the fact there are. It's a bit blessed in Porthmadog, so much so they refer to the big railway and the little railways. So there's one big railway, so the Cambrian line from all the way down in Machynlleth and Aberystwyth comes up via Harlech Castle across the coastal route in the big, and then goes on to Pwllheli. And then the little railways, I think technically there are 3 little railways. There is the Festiniog Railway, and then there are 2 branches of the Welsh West Highland Railway as well, which now goes all the way up to Carnarvon and up to Blaenau Festiniog, and I think you can get to Snowdon the other way as well. And as you can see from just where we were, where the estuary kind of comes under the town, the railway line actually crosses the main road, and several times a day they have to shut the main road and little steam trains come choo-chooing across. So it was very, very nice indeed. And also, actually, home of some very nice little boozers. Didn't get around them all, actually, which tells you a little bit about how good they were. And it is doubly blessed in that they don't have one railway tap, they actually have 2 railway taps. So there is a railway tap on the little railway station, which is right on the Cobb, famous Cobb that stretched across the Glacian estuary. And then a railway tap on the actual proper big railway station as well, which is the other end of town, just past Tesco's. So this is Spooners. Spooners was the refreshment room of the original Festiniog Railway. Spooner was one of the chief engineers. He designed all those little strange double-headed trains that you get on the Festiniog Railway, and that's where the name comes from. This goes straight onto the platform, and I think it's got one of the best beer garden views probably in the country. It was always fairly full. They always had 3 random beers and then 2 Purple Moose beers on all the time. Purple Moose are home in Porthmadog. And I think every day I went in there, there was a different set of beers on, which tells you how popular it was. I had a changing clientele. Obviously, in the day, it was full of choo-choo people and half-term full of kids and families. And then in the evening, it did become more of a little drinking place. And thankfully, this was 15 metres from where we were staying. So it was a very nice place to go and have some nice beers. And I've got to say, again, give them their due, virtually all those beers there. Wye Valley, okay, is just the other side of the border, but they're all pretty much Welsh beers focused. And I say at least 2 from the local brewery. But just to give you a sense, again, if you're on YouTube, that's the view from their little beer garden. So one is looking round the station. One is looking across the Cobb, and you can see there the steam train just leaving us. And then just when that train gone, if you turn to your right, that's the view over the glass and estuary, which is fantastic. You'd love it there, Nick. Really great bird watchers paradise, little egrets, curlew, oyster catchers, and probably other things that I didn't know what they were. So a really nice place. And again, we were blessed, as you can see there, in October. That was just before the week before Halloween. The weather, it was chilly, but you could sit out, and sitting out there as it went dusk was very nice. And then literally probably about 200 yards down the road is the Australia, which is a big pub on Porthmadog High Street. And this is the Purple, as it clearly says there, the Purple Moose Brewery Tap. So the Purple Moose Brewery has been in Porthmadog for about 20 odd years, I think. And again, it's growing quite a lot, and you do get a lot of their beers across this part of Wales. And the last time we were in Barmouth, a lot of the pubs stock their beers. The Australia, I've been honest, it probably looks slightly better than it actually is inside. It's a bit funky inside, as you can see there. It actually is small inside than it looks from the outside. It was quite compact, really, and quite narrow and quite limited. And again, with it being where it is, it gets a lot of footfall. Lots of people wanting food. The bus station, everything straight outside of it, so a lot of people kind of come and go. A lot of people with suitcases, obviously doing a bit of a tour, and it was just had that sticky feel to it. In that, whilst the staff are very good, the tables are all sticky. In fact, the lady, you can see that in the bar, actually pulled out of her bag a bloody hand spray and cloth before she sat down. She obviously was local. She sprayed her own table before she sat down. But anyway, all they do here is Purple Moose beers. So they probably had, I think they would probably have, including the keg versions, 9, 10 Purple Moose beers on. So certainly if you want to sample the brewery beers, I've got to say, I enjoyed them all. They do quite a nice range, typical range, blonde, pales, bitters, dark beers. Was it Dark Side of the Moon? Is their their takeaway?
Sometimes seeming Weatherspoons.
Yeah,
takes Purple Moose.
Quite distinct. Quite a nice bar, as you can see, although a bit modern looking, isn't it? And it's got all those purple mooses everywhere. It was all right. It was all right. And I say you didn't have to wait long to get a beer, and the beer was always served pretty well as well. And they've got some nice stuff up on the board, some stuff about the brewery, and the legend of the Purple Moose. Apparently, the moose who used to live on the slopes of Snowdonia used to eat the purple heather, and therefore in autumn, by the end of summer and into autumn, the moose would have a purple coat, and so that's where the brewery takes its name from. But as you see, they do a pilsner, they do their own pilsner, they do a mal, they do a Gulch, they do a bitter, do a porter, stout, pale ale, so they do quite a nice range of beers.
So they're saying there's moose in Wales.
There was moose in Wales before. What does it say on there? There was moose in Wales up to 1387, when the last one was bludgeoned to death.
So we took a photograph of the last purple one after eating all this other, did they? Right,
yeah.
Okay. More of the interest. Why is it called Australia? The pub.
I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
The brewery itself is a little bit, what do I have the word? It's not quite as inspiring, perhaps, as the pub. It's kind of two streets back from where the pub is there. We've got some nice gates with the Purple Mooses on it. They have a little shop there, but they have a much nicer shop.
And the parking space.
Yeah, and a much nicer place on the high street. They do tours, but only by invitation. So I think that it was all fairly closed up when we were there. We were going through. There's a couple of things about the Australian. They're not quite sure, and in fact, for quite a while it had a different name because a little bit like Salcombe. Whilst most of the harbour in Porthmadog was for slate, obviously they were famous for delivering the slate from Festiniog. They actually built very fast clipper ships, a bit like in Salcombe. They were very good at speeding across the seas very quick, and would do all kinds of like fruit and stuff as well as stuff. It was actually initially, for a while, this pub was called, I've got the name of it here somewhere. It was called the Gestinia, because the Gestinia was one of these Porthmadog ships, and unfortunately it was lost on its first ever trip across the Atlantic to America. So for quite a long time, it was actually named the Gestiana. And when this current pub went in doldrums a bit, the brewery bought it. I think they bought it in the early 2017. They bought it and made it back into Australia. A pub on this site was called the Australia as far back as 1849. And ships did sail from Porthmadog to Australia and New Zealand. So that's probably where they think the name got it from. But what's quite useful is the bus stop outside is called the Australia. So if you want to you get on the bus at Pwllheli and say, I want to go to Australia, please. And that's what they stamp on your ticket. It's just quite funny. Now, at the other end of town, I'd say a little bit less salubrious, over past Tesco's and over the level crossing, there's quite little Cambrian Line station. This is the big railway now. And on the big railway, there is the Station Inn, or the pub on the platform. This is much more basic. It's got a little bit of the Staley Bridge kind of barn, and you can see there from the outside, it's a bit similar. It's brick building. It's got a little Victorian, glassy bit outside the front. It's a bit more basic inside. It's basically like a big club, it felt like. on a Saturday afternoon when we were there. Pool table, football on, lots of families.
Carling, Worthington.
Yeah, lots of Welsh families drinking Carly and Worthington, with people coming in from the station as well. But again, they did have, I think they had two purple moose beers on, and another one as well. So it was okay. It was cheap. It was rough and ready. They were fine in there. When we first went in, it was like, oh God, and we've come to right. And I know Finn was with me, and he was going, oh Dad, I'm not sure about this, because there was quite a lot of kind of bald-headed men with tattoos speaking Welsh and drinking Carling. But they were fine. They were all right. They were fine. So
I mean, 6'2", 18 stone Finley.
Yeah, these are they were Welsh people.
Intimidating, right?
Yeah. Actually, on the way back into town, you passed the Royal Sportsman Hotel. Now, this has been closed. In fact, I wasn't sure this place was open. Camera were listing it, but then a lot of the camera things said it was shut. And it looks like it has been shut, but it's had a massive refurbishment and didn't look open. But I did venture in and actually found quite a nice cocktail bar that does serve real ale. I was the only person in. This is Saturday at about 5 o'clock, and was the only. I had said to the receptionist, "Can I get a drink in the bar?" She goes, "Oh yeah, of course you can." So she had to walk from reception into this bar here, and you can see on YouTube there. It's a fantastic room, very well done, very cocktaily. Yeah. But look, they did have a Lynn beer. Sethian, and it was all right actually. So give them the due. That's a local beer from up the road, Beauty and Pathelli. And it wasn't. I think she charged about £4.50 for it. So definitely worth looking in. Really interesting building. Obviously, he's got stables around the back and an old garage. So this was one of the coaching inns. The story is that Porthmadog was on the original Irish route. So a couple of kind of wealthy people back in the 1800s thought that this would be the route to Ireland, because it was going to carry on past Pathelli to Aberdare on the end there. And so quite a lot of building and was done. And of course, unfortunately, somebody built a bridge across the Menai Straits, and Holyhead became the route to Ireland and not Aberdare on. So there's quite a bit of that, and that's a little bit the railway. There's a little bit of history about that as well, that it was really a bit of a white elephant that was never really used. In fact, the Festinio Railway, I think by something like 1840, was already doing passenger trains, because they recognised that there wasn't going to be enough just in freight alone. You had to start taking people around. Some of the other pubs in the town that I didn't manage to get into, Taffan Pensy basically means the inn, the quayside inn. Unfortunately, that was quite slightly odd. It was more of a cafe bar and wasn't really open when I was out and about. The Ship again.
Yeah, I actually parked on that a little bit last time.
I was there. Yeah. The Ship was interesting,
outside, but I wouldn't have thought it was a bar.
No, the Ship didn't have any real ale, unfortunately, but has a fantastic ship outside.
Yeah, it's great too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the Porthmadog. I'm amazed it hasn't been nicked. In fact, some pictures it has been nicked. It's not there. But apparently a guy recently has redone it for them. And that's one of the Porthmadog schooners that were very fast boats. I did walk in the Red Lion, which is just off the high street, and then walked straight back out again, because I walked in, there was no real ale. Even the bloody keg beers were like desperate. So I thought, I'm not even going to bother. So I didn't bother going there. Just up the road is Tremadog, which is linked. This is kind of a little extension to the town. And in there again, there's a couple of nice little bars opposite the square, the Union Inn and the Golden Fleece. Golden Fleece is a really interesting pub. Again, unfortunately, neither of them do real ale. Again, I did have a quick look in the Golden Fleece, but decided not to stay. Lots of very strange spaces in there, like kind of caverns and kind of what were cellars. So very interesting. And we had a really good meal in that one on the bottom left-hand corner. That's with Cigar in Welsh, which is the square. And that was, we had a fantastic Sunday lunch in there. And again, they were serving Purple Moose beers in bottles. So all very good. And then just to finish off, on the way back, I say we called into Bangor. And the first for me is a Wetherspoons in a Catholic church. So the Black Bull Inn, there was a Black Bull apparently famously on the street for quite a while, but it's a Catholic church, and that was whatever the word is, consecrated or unconsecrated a while ago.
Decassocked.
Wetherspoons have moved in and actually have done quite a nice job on it, really. It's quite impressive, both inside and outside. Yeah, very interesting that where the bar is. But again, if you look on the bar, right? So we're in the heart of North Wales. This is Welsh Wales. I mean, everybody here was speaking Welsh. There's a Salcombe beer on. there's that Japanese beer brewed by Banks's. There is Abbott on, and there's Timothy's, and there's another Salcombe beer on, and that was their beer choice on a Saturday. On a what was this? It was a Monday morning. Quite a lot of obviously university students in here having breakfast because it's only across the way from the university. But again, a very interesting one.
Big beer garden at the back.
But yeah,
and lots
nice
of
with the
different
terrace.
levels.
Yeah,
And
nice
a huge big car park around
Yeah,
the back as
quite
well.
useful
So
actually
car
there.
parking.
Yeah. So that was my little. So definitely, Porthmadog is definitely worth a little tour. I certainly, if you love trains, I say that Spooners Bar is hard to beat. That view really, and I say, and the beauty of having a good brewery in town as well. So I've got us a few Purple Moose beers. They did me a deal in the shop. I think I got 20% off of my first box. So I've got a box of their beers, which is very nice as well. Very good. So that's been a real whirlwind there. So we've done the Isle of Wight, Blackpool, and Porthmadog, but all very good. In our next episode, though, we're going to catch up with the boys who had a little trip around the mill and mill towns, really, of northern Manchester. Yeah, the Chorley Trail, which looked like a day of hits and misses, I think. And I know, Bruce, you said he went on a Monday, which is always slightly dodgy, isn't it? Because some places are closed. And you certainly saw the high and the lows, and one or two towns doing very well, and one or two towns probably worth shutting and leaving.
I mean, a couple of weeks before that, I'd gone to Dundee for a few hours, and that was a Friday, and there's just a totally different vibe on a Friday, isn't there? Really, I think we'll avoid Monday for our pub trips now. I think one vibe in the week that Five Samson's pubs closed, he now started putting this very swish brochure in all the pubs. It's a very high quality brochure, but what it does illustrate is how astonishing the Melbourne Brothers brewery is at Stanford. We'll have to try and go there. I have no idea, but all the machinery is either steam driven or mechanically driven. It looks absolutely amazing. We really must try and get there.
And apparently, we said that they apparently have a pub on site, and seem to be a little bit more open to visitors than perhaps the Tadcaster sister site is. And they specialised on the fruit beers that Sam Smith. They've always been a fruit beer specialist. So we certainly learned that on our little trip.
I was there a few weeks ago. The pub was closed, but we try to get that. It looked amazing. Yeah.
So that's maybe a plan for the new year. We've also probably going to. I spent some time with a beer the other week, writing down a few ideas about where we might go next in our pub quest. Obviously, we're getting towards 70 episodes, so we've got to probably reinvent the wheel at some point. We'll hopefully try and get together at some point over Christmas and New Year, which will be upon us before we even know it. I think once you get past Remembrance Sunday, it kind of speeds up, doesn't it? The year. So we'll have to try and get our heads around how we might get together for a Christmas Crimble beer. I know you two normally go out the week before, don't you? Try and get a day out. So you perhaps need to let me know a date, and I'll get that booked in my calendar as well. That'll make a nice one. I think I'm probably going to have a quieter weekend this weekend than I had last weekend. Not a lot go. Actually, we've got a few. We played in the band a couple of times. It's that time of year when Christmas lights start going on. So I know we've got a couple of gigs this weekend. Any plans? I know Nicholas has been to London, so you can perhaps give us a little update on that when we see him next. Bruce will no doubt be travelling all around the world again on his. You're at work.
No, I'm at work. So no. But we did. But I will report back. I found an astonishing new Sam Smith's pub last weekend. That was amazing. We've all probably been within a quarter of a mile of it hundreds of times. Never set foot in it. All of us. That was quite amazing. But nothing too much planned for the time being.
Very good. So, gentlemen, good catching up. I say I've got another one in the can that we can start to talk about, which is mainly your trip around those mill towns. So we'll perhaps try and get that done in a week or so's time. So look out for episode 65. Without further ado, we'll go out with the music.
Bye.